Now, art is a difficult subject to talk about since it is a purely subjective topic. To you, this may look like an amazing piece of art, but to me, this looks like something a child could have made and it was sold for millions. Everything about art relies on a person creating or experiencing a piece. Even when you look at the aspects of art, such as symmetry, color, and shapes, every famous artist has used them in varying ways, and yet they're all considered as good art. And the artists that made them are praised for being great artists. So, to say that certain scenes or aspects of a game is artistic or is a piece of art is such a scary thing to say because everyone has their own perception of what art truly is. But to make it all clear, don't see this video as an in-depth critique of what makes these games that I'm going to talk about artistic, because really, this is just my way of saying that these games are pretty as hell, man. But I will be explaining why I personally consider these games or aspects of these games as art. So let's start. A pretty game number one, Dead Cells. Now, Dead Cells is an interesting game because it's a roguelike side-scroller that lifts a lot of features from the Souls game. Now, this means that the game is a tough little bugger, and advancing through the game takes hours. Now, I can talk about why this game is freaking awesome for almost 12 minutes, but that's not why we're here. We're here to talk about the design and art style of the backgrounds in the various stages of the game's world. Before anything, let me just say that the pixel-based graphic style used to represent the game was such a great move by the developer. It makes the whole game feel natural and look goddamn good while doing it. While this is not the cream of the crop of the game's artistic side, it is good to note. Now let's proceed to the backgrounds, and yeah. Now first off, this is the most obvious reason, and is that it's just such a great visual representation of the map that you're in. Now if you've played the game, you might not have noticed it the first time you went through a new zone, because you were either frustrated from the difficulty, or you were scurrying to find some help in a helpless world. But each background, the moment you see it, will represent what the map has in store for you, and what specific kind of terrain you're going up against. Secondly, a more unnoticeable aspect of the background is how each of them can convey a certain emotion. This isn't easy to do because, much like art, how we evoke certain emotions is subjective. But the backgrounds for Dead Cells always convey a uniform emotion that you feel playing through that particular stage, like fear, joy, relief, disgust, yada yada yada, those kinds of emotions. Finally, the small details that make each background such a treat to look at, and what makes them truly come alive. The artists or artists that worked on these backgrounds made sure to add every single detail that would make the background come to life. Sometimes they even include smaller details to change how a certain background affects the player. Something as small as this can only be noticed when it's gone. And really, paying close attention to these details is what makes these backgrounds so good, man. Now, these aren't the only things that make Dead Cells pretty as hell, but these are the aspects that really stick with you. Dead Cells, I'd make out with you if I could, but sadly, you're a video game. And after the incident, it just wouldn't work. Sad face, single tear. The second purity game, The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt. Now, I can take the obvious route and say that the artistic aspect of The Witcher 3 is its size, or its environmental design, or a purely aesthetic aspect of the game. While this is completely valid and The Witcher 3 is absolutely pretty as heck, I want to look at something a bit deeper that makes it truly artistic. It's known for a fact that The Witcher 3 has hundreds of hours worth of content in the form of Witcher contracts, side quests, and treasure hunts. And there's one thing that's uniform in all of them. All these quests contain a story crafted with the same dedication and care as the main storyline, and in turn, you're given some pretty spicy stuff. Looking at the story and context behind the quests, you often overlook how human these conflicts are that's caused these quests to come into fruition in the first place, mainly because you're distracted by the fact that it's taking place in a fantastical world full of wyverns and neckers. Yeah. But looking closely into it, you start seeing that these problems are the same problems that normal humans face, such as greed, jealousy, race for power, cowardice, and even politics. Because of this, it makes it easier for us to relate and empathize with a lot of these characters, and in turn, have a lot of interest in these stories themselves. Art isn't purely a visual thing, because the writing in this style evokes emotions, and, well, has more or less the same impact or effect as the art style in Dead Cells. So yeah, Witcher 3, you're pretty goddamn good at what you do, man, even though you're already a 2-year-old game. Third pretty game, Doom 4 or something. I don't know what to call it. Is it Doom or just Doom 4? So let's take a step back from the intricacies of Witcher 3's human stories and look at a more straightforward example. Doom is purely aesthetic in value, or at least the artistic side of it is purely aesthetic in value. Because really, that's its biggest, its biggest thing that it has going for it. Yeah. Doom is a 2016 game that I guess you can call a reboot of the original Doom, even though technically in the timeline it's kind of follows it. And it's beautiful as hell. And it's not just because of the general design either. You see, Doom has too much detail, and I'm saying that as a compliment. Using high technology CSI scanning equipment, aka the photo mode of the game, you can look into the nooks and crannies of the baddies and the backies, or also known as the background for the layman. Looking closer, you start to realize that they spared no expense in designing and putting into detail most things that you see in the game. Monsters have super detailed tongues and claws, and the hallways of each map have certain details that you only see on that particular area. Hell, the guns have small little nuts and bolts that you barely see in the game. But you see, that's why it's great. You barely notice it, but it makes all the difference. You subconsciously feel like everything is in its place, no matter how scarce of it you see. Now that I think about it, id Software did a really great job because they understood that gamers are gonna do that. They're gonna look into every single place and look for every single piece of detail that can be found in that place, and that's why they've spared no expense in doing it. Good job, id Software. You the man. And Doom, keep being pretty as hell, even though you're also almost become a 2-year-old game. Conclusion. So to end, video games are pretty. Whether it's through hyperrealism like Doom, or just a great looking art style like Dead Cells. Video games are pretty damn pretty. And again, don't see this video as a professional critique of art in gaming, because it's far from that. Really, it just feels great to gush and freak out from time to time over how much video game art styles have improved, both on a visual and non-visual aspect. If you like the video, please comment and like in the descriptions below. Thank you.